Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 of my Watercolor Rooster series. And in this video we're going to go ahead and add the darker paint and add some ink to it. If you want to see what materials I use, check out part 1 in this series where I have a list of the traditional watercolors that I use. The app that I'm using is ArtRage for Android, and we're going to go ahead and start working a little bit more on the feathers of the rooster. And I'm going to be using the dry on wet brush in ArtRage, and if you're following along traditionally, your number 6 round brush will work just fine for this. And so I'm adding the dark colors now to his tail feathers. And you want to go ahead and make sure that you don't kill all the light aqua color, because that's going to be your highlight. And so you have to leave your highlight and don't try to cover it over. And I'm just kind of making some indications of some of the feathers there, and around on the front, darkening a little bit of the feathers on the wings and around in the front. And this time you are going to use watercolor with less water so that it's more opaque and that it covers a little bit better. But I'm still sort of smudging it out just a little bit with the Harsh Chaos blender, just trying to give it that watercolor look in ArtRage. And then I need to work on his comb on top of his head. And again, you would start with a lighter red color, a real transparent type of a red color, a pinkish color. And you want to get his comb and his wattles. And then there's a little bitty dot behind his eyes, and I believe that's supposed to be his ear. And it's kind of usually either white or yellow looking. And you want to do his beak as well. There's a little bit of some feathers around his eye. Their eyes are usually kind of a yellow amber color, so you want to get that in there. And I'm just kind of working around there and smudging that in. And then I'm going to add the brighter reds and the darker reds to the top of his comb and under his beak, and just try to kind of get the structure of his wattles and everything that goes around his eyes there and above his beak. And so I'm just sort of smoothing that out, but I'm giving it a little bit of a brighter red color, but I'm not killing all the light pink color. And again, that's going to be sort of your highlight. And then I was just playing around with some of the brushes there, just seeing what they would do, some of the smaller strokes. And I'm adding some darker red now, the final sort of shadows that are on his comb and under his nose and around his eye there, and just kind of refining that look, and also a little bit of refinement to the feathers on his head and that go down all the way on his neck. And you can change the size of your brush and put in a numerical value if you want it really precise. And so I was doing that, just trying to get sort of a really smaller brush. And so if you're following along traditionally, you might want to use a script liner brush for this detail, because you want to try to get the detail on his beak and a little bit around his eye and the dot in his eye. And then here I wanted to add the white feathers. And so if you're going to do that, you either leave that place blank, but if you've covered it up, you can use a really thick tubed white watercolor or white gouache. And gouache is just kind of a thicker watercolor that isn't quite as transparent. Or you can use white acrylic for this, because acrylic is also a water-based paint. So you can also use it in conjunction with watercolor. And then I'm adding a little bit more highlights to around his eye and on his wings. I'm using some light blue on the wings, and again, you could use some tubed watercolor and very, very little water, or you can just use gouache, and that will also give you that little highlight there. And then I was working on his feet. I added some pink and some gray there to give kind of the colors of his the chicken feet. And then you can stop here if you want to, or you can add a little bit more details with some watercolor without any without lots of water in it if you're following along traditionally, or you can go ahead and do pen and ink. And I like to do pen and ink, and so I'm fixing to switch to pen and ink here. But I was working a little bit more on the shadows underneath the rooster and adding a little bit more purple to kind of give a better shadow look. But here I've switched to ink, and I'm using the thick and thin pen. I decided that I liked it because it kind of gives it a more natural look of pen working on paper. Now, like I said, you can stop right here. You don't have to add anything else if you don't want the ink look. But I just love pen and ink and sort of that rough, sketchy look. So I went ahead and added inks that are close to the color of the rooster. So like here you would add a kind of an orangish brown ink for the detail on his feathers. And make sure that you're using a really small ink pen as well, like a 0.5 or a 0.1 millimeter nib on these. And you can use blue right here on his feathers, and even black if you want to. Just kind of don't cover up, again, don't cover everything up. Just kind of give indications of feathers and let the light areas show through there because you want to keep those highlights. You're just kind of trying to add little accents and details, and you can do some of this with a very thin brush and, like I said, some thick watercolor without a lot of water, but the ink just kind of gives it a more refined look, maybe a little bit, or maybe just kind of a more sketchy look. Anyway, I'm doing some more details on the comb here, just refining that a little bit more and around the eye. And you would use sort of a reddish ink maybe, or a grayish ink in that area. And they've got lots of different colors of inks and lots of different brands, Sakura brands, and all kinds. And just the sky's the limit. They have Winsor Newton, everything. And if you're going to go ahead and add the ink last, it's okay if it's not a waterproof ink. But if you're going to do your inking first, then make sure that you have a waterproof ink because it will run, unless that's what you want. Some people just paint with ink washes. So they could do this entire painting with an ink wash if you really like to work with inks, because there's lots of water-soluble inks as well. And here I'm just kind of adding more refinements to his feet and adding sort of the details to his legs. Just kind of trying to get the shape of his legs correct by looking at the photo reference there. And just adding a little bit more of some sketchy details. But again, I'm not killing all the color or trying to get rid of the highlights. You just want the ink to accent your painting. You don't want it to take it over at this point. And just kind of working a little bit more on the details around his eye and his nose, his beak there. And then I just went ahead and signed it. And I was trying to get it to sign right there, but I had to really zoom in on ArtRage to get it to sign there. But so this is what you do, and you save it, and then you want to export it out of ArtRage to make a final JPEG or PNG version of your painting, and then you can go ahead and use it for whatever you want to do, add things onto t-shirts or mugs or make prints out of it, but that's how you export it out of ArtRage, and you have to do that when you get ready for your final picture to be finished and to get it out of ArtRage. So this is the end of my watercolor rooster series. Stay tuned for a brand new painting coming soon. And if you want to see what that is, hit the subscribe button. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions or suggestions about what you would like to see next, just leave them in the comments down below. And I will catch you later.